the second episode of Cancelled. Today we will be discussing 2 intermediate level books that have been banned, and we will be interviewing Mrs.Emanuel on her opinions on banned books. The 2 books I will be talking about today are Drama by Raina Telgemeier and Charlotte's Web by Evie White. I will also be giving synopsises of both books, and telling you why they've been banned, some of my opinions on them. So, Drama by Raina Telgemeier is a graphic novel about a girl named Callie, who's a part of the crew for her school's performance of Moon Over Mississippi. At the beginning, Callie gets kissed by her crush after he breaks up with his girlfriend, and Callie doesn't really like her. He does end up getting back with her. Callie then meets 2 new students named Justin and Jesse, who are interested in joining the show. Justin is a loud boy who wants to be a part of the cast. Jesse, on the other hand, is a quiet boy, and he quite likes just letting his brother shine. Justin gives Callie some advice while they're hanging out in front of her crush's baseball practice to try to make her crush jealous. Callie then bonds with Jesse as well by hanging out at a bookshop where she shows him the sets she dreams of making. Callie bonds with Jesse by hanging out at a bookshop, and she shows him the sets she dreams of making. Callie then invites Jesse to do crew with her. Jesse's brother, is gay, and comes out to Callie while they eat lunch together. Callie then learns that Bonnie, her crush's girlfriend, is trying out, and that Jesse also doesn't like her due to the fact that Jesse is her, I believe, math tutor. In addition, Callie tries to get Jesse to try out, but he refuses. Callie then ends up going up as a joke, and it turns out she can't sing, at all. Justin ends up with the role of the comedic relief character and not the lead, which he wanted, and he's quite disappointed. Bonnie, on the other hand, gets the lead female role. Callie then works on building the set, and during that time, Justin ends up giving the stage manager some googly eyes. The entire drama group then goes out to the costume ball, and Bonnie's being loud and obnoxious, and just annoying. Callie then starts to kind of figure out that she has kind of a growing crush on Jesse. Callie and Jesse end up going to a bookstore together, and Justin mentions that his dad isn't really ready for him to get a boyfriend. Callie, another plot point is that Callie is trying to build a cannon for their show. And so Callie has to take the cannon home to get it to work. And the drama club needs help selling tickets. During this time, Callie finally gets it to work, and it helps sell a ton of tickets for their show. During the last show, the lead male falls and hurts himself, and Bonnie ends up throwing a fit that he fell on her, and no one's giving her attention, even though he's the one who got hurt. And then later on, after it's revealed to him that Bonnie was trying to cheat, he breaks up with her, which leads to Bonnie locking herself in a broom closet during the last show. And so Jesse dresses up in Bonnie's costume and goes out to finish the scene in the show and kisses the male lead on stage in front of everyone. And then after everything, Jesse asks Callie to the 8th grade dance with him. While at the dance, Jesse abandons Callie to hang out with West, who's the guy who was playing the male lead in the show. Callie cries, but still ends up having a good night with her friends. Jesse makes Callie mad by telling her not to fall in love with every guy she meets, however, and she storms off. On her way home, she runs into Greg, who is her old crush, and he tells her that he wants to get with her, but Callie shuts him down, which is a huge turn from the beginning of the book, where she freaks out and is really excited that he's willing to kiss her. Callie and Jessie end up making up in the end and end up being friends. And the whole book ends with Callie becoming the stage manager for their next year's show. This book was banned because parents were upset that there wasn't a warning that in one of the scenes you see two boys kissing. And it was also banned because of the feeling by people that it was politically offensive. The second book I will be discussing is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, which many of you have probably already heard of, if not read yourselves, in elementary school. Charlotte's Web begins with an 8-year-old girl named Fern getting quite upset about her father killing a pig that's the runt of the litter. Her father lets Fern keep the pig if she can keep it alive. Fern's father then uses this to teach her brother to get up early. Then the kids go to school. Fern decides to name the pig Wilbur. Fern takes really good care of Wilbur. Fern's dad then tries to sell Wilbur, but Fern wants nothing to do with it and wants to be able to see Wilbur, so she's sold to her uncle. Wilbur didn't really like the barn he gets stuck in. Wilbur was tired and bored, but then the goose came up to him, and the goose tells him he should escape. Wilbur tries to run away, but gets chased. And then he gets chased, leading to Wilbur kind of just getting sad and missing Fern. Wilbur then gets upset and scared, leading to him getting caught and brought back. Wilbur is just incredibly lonely. So lonely, in fact, that his owners think he's sick due to the fact that he's not eating his food. Wilbur is then talked to by this mysterious voice, who turns out to be Charlotte, a spider who lives in the corner of his pig pen. Wilbur watches Charlotte kill a fly and is horrified. Eventually, the eggs that the goose had been protecting hatch. And one of the eggs doesn't hatch, and the goose allows the rat Templeton to take it. Wilbur then starts to gain weight and is told by the sheep that the farmers are going to kill him, and that's why they're fattening him up. This frightens Wilbur, but there's not much he thinks he can do. Fern likes to sit in the barn and listen to the animals talk. She goes home and talks to her parents about what went on in the barn, and they get worried due to the fact that animals shouldn't be able to talk. Fern's dad says not to worry, but Fern's mom insists on telling the doctor, who doesn't seem to worry. Wilbur tries to make webs like Charlotte does, but simply just ends up making Charlotte laugh. Wilbur then talks to Charlotte about how he doesn't want to die, and she promises to help save him. Charlotte comes up with a plan to trick Zuckerman, the farmer who owns Wilbur. Fern's brother then comes and tries to catch Charlotte, but it doesn't work. And he actually ends up breaking the egg that Templeton had taken and causing the entire barn to stink up. Charlotte then writes in her web saying, "some pig," which surprises the farmers. The farmer begins to think that Wilbur is special. He then goes to tell his wife, who comes to check it out, and is surprised, just amazed by it. News spreads far and wide that Zuckerman had a special pig, and tons of people come to see Wilbur. Charlotte then holds a meeting with everyone in the farm to come up with something else for her to write. And in the end, she gets Templeton to go out and get her some new words. So later, Charlotte changes the word in her web to terrific, and everyone who had already come to see Wilbur comes back to see him again. Zuckerman decides that Wilbur is worth keeping and brings Wilbur to the county fair. But before he does that, but while he's deciding that, Fern's mom goes to the doctor to tell him about Fern again. The doctor tells Fern's mother that he thinks she is just fine and not to worry, and living up to the expectations, even though he's still quite worried about getting killed. Charlotte doesn't want to go to the fair with Wilbur because she needs to have her eggs. And she feels she can't do that if she goes to the fair. Mrs. Zuckerman then gives Wilbur a bath, making sure he is squeaky clean. Templeton goes with Wilbur, as well as Charlotte, to the fair, so that Templeton can eat all the leftover scraps and help Charlotte get new words. Wilbur is then told to struggle a little when he gets put in the crate. Works quite well. But then Wilbur gets really upset and faints, and Mr. Zuckerman mentions that he may still be eaten. Wilbur, Charlotte, and Templeton all go to the fair. Fern and her brother run off to go play at the fair. Charlotte gets quite worried because there is a big pig in the pen next to Wilbur. Charlotte goes to talk to him, and it turns out he's quite rude. Charlotte's kind of running out of energy, though. People are coming to see them, but they like the pig next to Wilbur more than they like him. Templeton then goes to explore and brings back the word humble for Charlotte to put in her web. That Wilbur could win a prize. And then that night, Charlotte makes something for herself. She makes an egg sack. She's very proud of her egg sack. And she's quite sad that she won't be able to see them hatch because of how horrible she's feeling. Templeton has a great time. On the other hand, he goes around and eats all the leftover food. And he comes back and says that the pig next door has gotten a blue ribbon, and Wilbur is just absolutely horrified. But after Charlotte changes the word, once they get to where Wilbur will be given his award, Wilbur is cheered for, and people love him. But Wilbur ends up fainting, just due to being sheerly overwhelmed. But still manages to win when Templeton wakes him up by biting his tail. Once they've gotten back to where they've been staying, Charlotte told Wilbur that she's very proud of him and that she is safe now. Charlotte tells Wilbur that she will die, and Wilbur is absolutely heartbroken. Wilbur then makes Templeton go get Charlotte's egg sack, so that they can bring it back to the farm because the people are coming back. Charlotte sadly passes away at the fair, but Wilbur is able to safely carry her eggs all the way back to the farm, and after quite a while, Charlotte's kids finally hatch out of the eggs, and a lot of them fly away, causing Wilbur to be quite worried, but 3 choose to stay with him. And in the end, Wilbur ends up living a long, happy life, and he always has friends with him, though he never quite forgets Charlotte and how much she did for him. This book was banned because parents thought that the talking animals were disrespectful to God due to their belief that humans were higher and the only things that should be allowed to speak. Now that you've heard what the books are about and why they've been banned, I'm going to talk about my opinions on the books and them being banned in certain places. So, I quite liked both books. Personally, drama was my favorite of the two, but that might also just be, I read drama more than once growing up, so I just, have an attachment to it that I don't really have as much with Charlotte's Web. And I think they're both very quaint books, very sweet, well-meaning, good books for, really any age. I think my opinion on the books being banned is that it doesn't make much sense to ban Charlotte's Web to me, in particular, just due to the fact that I feel that that book being banned has no stance. Because the only reasons I could find was people feeling it wasn't okay that the animals were talking, it not being good for like it being almost ungodly in a way, and I just don't think that makes much sense when you look at the genre Charlotte's Web falls into as a children's book and a work of fiction. It just seems unrealistic that they have any means to ban it to begin with, because it's a fiction book. It's not supposed to be real. You have the mother character outright goes to a doctor to talk about this in the book, and it's said in the book that children are supposed to be innocent, and it's like they don't really take Fern all that seriously. It's not supposed to be taken with like reality, with this people like thinking like this is supposed to be real, you know? So I just doesn't make much sense that they banned it. Drama, on the other hand, I can understand people who don't feel comfortable with the LGBTQ plus community not liking this book. It makes sense to me. I do feel it's unnecessary to ban it when you could just simply either warn someone or just like give them like some sort of like forewarning, some sort of buffer if you think you really must. But it just feels like something that's not consequential to someone's experience. It doesn't hurt someone to read. It doesn't want you to be violent. Doesn't have drugs in it or sexual connotations at all. It's my biggest gripe with the book to begin with was just kind of how Jesse kind of just left her. But that's not a gripe with him or the book in general. It just kind of was a plot point I didn't love. So it doesn't make sense to ban the book for something that doesn't really hurt anyone at all. Both of the books were very good. And they're just very sweet books that don't mean any harm, that I think are both very good learning experiences for children. Charlotte's Web does an amazing job of teaching about friendship and the fact that just because your friend's gone doesn't mean you have to forget about them. And drama is just a very good realistic fiction. It's a good look into what you could do. It could easily introduce someone to theater, which would be amazing. But I quite like theater too, so. But the books are just not doing anything to harm, so I don't understand what the purpose of banning them would even be. Now that you've heard me talk plenty about some books that have been banned, I think it's time that we interview Mrs. Emanuel on her opinions on banned books. Hi.
Hi.
So how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So I'm gonna just ask you some questions about your opinions on banned books.
Absolutely.
So what's your opinion on banned books?
I'm of the opinion that I don't think any one person has the right to ban what somebody else has put down and published in a book. I kind of would support that freedom of speech sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you think the fact that a banned book is, like, banned represents, like, the quality of the book?
I do not at all. I think it represents the people who have maybe some different ideas or different thoughts about it. I don't think it has, in my opinion, it doesn't have anything to do with the book, but more about the judgments and the values of the people who want to ban it.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that as well. A lot of very popular books have been banned, and I'm like, huh.
Right?
Would you read banned books to, like, kids or, like, children in your class?
I absolutely would. I'm sure that I probably have at some point in time, because the list of banned books seems to keep growing. So I'm sure at some point in time I've probably shared banned books with kids. I think what happens now, like in 2023, some of the things that we read that maybe were written or published in the 60s or the 70s don't hold up because of all of the ways that we've changed words and terminology and those kinds of things. So things that might be read today and someone would say, oh my gosh, that's so racist, or that's so whatever. Well, it wasn't when the book was written. And I think you have to walk into it and know that we're reading a book that's from a different time period, and people thought differently and acted differently then. So I think it's an opportunity to teach kids, to teach into that, right? To teach into some of the things that we might encounter in some of those banned books.
I can also see something like that being a good way to explain they're using this word, but maybe we shouldn't.
100%, absolutely.
Do you think there are certain, like, topics that should be avoided in schools?
I know that there are topics that are avoided. That's a tricky one for me. So part of what I think is that I think all books have a right and a reason to be out there and to be published. And if there's something in those books that I'm not comfortable with, I may avoid sharing it with kids. There's definitely topics that I'm not ready to share with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders that I work with. Part of me thinks, not that there's anything wrong with those topics, but maybe they're topics that families want to talk about first, you know, I think.
Is it hard to find books that are, like, appropriate for...
You know what? I have a 5th grade group right now. It's 5 boys and 1 girl, and we've been reading most all of it's been newer literature. We just read a James Patterson book, and the kids were pumped about it. So I'm trying to introduce them to a lot of different genres. But when you do pull a book like that, that's the one we just read was published in 2022. You do have to look ahead and make sure that the content is appropriate. And I'm trying to think of some of the things that came up. The book we read had a lot to do with death and what happens after you die. So again, I always preface it with, this is just one person's opinion of what happens after you die. So maybe things are this way or maybe they're not. Like, we're just sort of reading one person's take on it.
How does banning books, like, affect how you teach?
It doesn't necessarily affect how I teach here at Greg's school. It's certainly something I'm always interested in. I'm always interested in what's been banned and why it's been banned, and but it doesn't necessarily impact what I do day to day.
So I read Charlotte's Web and the graphic novel book Drama for this episode. Have you read them?
I have read both of them.
What are your, like, opinions on them?
So Charlotte's Web has always been one of my favorite books, and I know someone had mentioned to me that it is on the banned list. I honestly don't know why. Do you?
So in my research, I found that it was banned in certain places due to people feeling that it wasn't okay that the animals were, like, the speaking animals. One specific one source I found said that they believed it was against God that the animals were speaking.
Oh, I think it's called fiction.
Yeah.
Right? So I've always thought that Charlotte's Web was one of the most wonderful books about friendship. that I've ever read. Like, it's one that I absolutely love. It's a book I'd share with my with my grandkids, with school. Drama was the other one. Drama I read a while ago, and I read a few of them. I read Drama and Guts and maybe Sisters, so I hope I don't mix them up. I think the issue with Drama isn't there a crush between a same-sex...
Yes, there's...
some same-sex characters.
There's a kiss scene.
A kiss. Oh, okay.
Of a side... A main, but kind of side. He's not the main character,
right.
But he's an important side character.
Right. So... it doesn't offend me. I have had kids bring that book back to me, too, that I can think of. And they've said to me, my parents don't think this is appropriate. And I said, that's okay. I'm glad your parents are aware of what you're reading. And if they don't think it's appropriate for you, that's okay. I'll take it right back and you can pick something else. I know that it was brought to the attention of the principal, even. And she asked me if I was aware that there were some concerns about it. And I said, absolutely. I don't tell kids what's in the book when they pick it. And honestly, other than those two incidents, I've not had anyone ever mention it other than that. And actually, it wasn't until somebody brought the book back to me that I thought, oh, I better read this. This sounds interesting. And then I read it, so I knew.
Yeah, I read it, and it was a big scene, but it wasn't even the main character.
Right.
Like, it wasn't, like, it didn't feel like something I'm like, really?
Yeah. And it's interesting because you wonder, I don't know that it bothers students. I think it's more parents who are maybe not as comfortable with that kind of content. You know?
Yeah. They're both quite good. I quite like them.
Right. It is, I will say that whole series is flies out of here still, and it's been years like that kids still gravitate towards that.
I also just really liked the art style of Drama. It was very pretty.
Right, I agree.
I also quite liked Charlotte's Web. Because it's lower than my reading level, I had to be like, it's for kids.
Right.
Like, for some of sometimes some of the dialogue, I'm like, yeah.
And it's old.
Old.
I would have to, I don't know the copyright on it, but it's got to be the 60s,
Probably.
Late 60s. So you're talking a book that's 50-ish years old. So you're right. And so that's the issue that I have when I try to share it with kids now is that, Fern and, they go to the county fair. Like, they don't have a lot of context for that. It's just an older time period.
Yeah, and some of the way Charlotte the spider talks sometimes, I'm like, you definitely sound like you were written by someone a little
Yeah.
It was written in 1952.
Get out of here. Wow. It's really old.
Yeah.
It's older than me.
It's a very quaint book, I guess.
Oh, I think it has such phenomenal messages about friendship. I really do. Great vocabulary for kids.
Yes. I was I almost because at the very beginning I forgot that Charlotte dies at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
And I think when you read it, there's so much humor and how Wilbur will throw himself on the ground and cry, and Charlotte will be like, he tells him it's not dignified. I think it's a great story.
Yeah.
I always felt like the one and only Ivan to me is my modern day Charlotte's Web. Such a story of friendship in there.
Yeah. I've read The One and Only Ivan. That was a pretty good book too.
Loved it. And it has talking animals. So you wonder if people who want to ban Charlotte's Web want to ban all books with talking animals, right?
What's the difference? Are you going to ban, almost every single picture book?
Right, because then you get into fables. I mean, fables are animals that act like people and teach a lesson. That's kind of crazy. For sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking with me today and for giving me some of your awesome opinions on banned books.
Oh, you are absolutely welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening to the second episode of Cancelled, and thank you again to Mrs. Emanuel for your time and point of view. Today I've learned that banned books are very complicated. Make sure to come back next time for a good YA book. Have a very good day. Bye!